It has been a while since we've had an existential meltdown chat on this channel, and I, for one, plan to end that hiatus right now. So this is going to be cozy, but it's also going to be full of dread, as all of my videos tend to be. Just a little bit. What I'm going to coin dopamine doom. So if you would like to grab a coffee or a tea or maybe a Diet Coke, which is what I've just had, which is why I'm a little bit wired, this is going to be one of those intentionally rambly videos where I just at you to try and work out how I feel about a topic. And how I feel about this topic is that I'm failing. Now, you might say, Lena, you've just learned to make your own clothes. You seem to be sitting in a shed of your own making. How can you feel like you're failing? Well, the hype man inside me wants to agree with you, but I also have been feeling this way for a little while, and it's to do with an ambition, a hope, a tendency that I don't lean into, but I have talked about previously on this channel, so I don't know how often I've been mentioning it recently, but I'd really like to write a book, and that sounds vulnerable to say, and also a little bit wanky, you know. And I say that as somebody who worked in the UK publishing industry for like 9 years and still freelances there a little bit. You know, everybody wants to write a book. It's not cute, it's not individual, it's not that interesting, to be honest. If you've worked in an environment where people who love books gather, it's cool and it's amazing to talk about, and I actually, like, when I talk about it and when people talk to me about me, we're all very supportive, but it's not unusual. I want to talk about a specific project that I feel a lot of failure around, and the story starts in 2017. Now, in 2017, I had done an English undergrad and English masters where I had done some creative writing modules. I've been writing poetry since the year dot. I love writing poetry. That's something that just feels like it happens on the side to me, like taking a dump every day. I write a poem every day, I don't know why. But by 2017, I had written one novel. It was really bad. You'll never see it. It's kind of incomplete, even though it was kind of also finished. It was butt-numbingly autobiographical in the worst way. And I have buried it, / maybe even deleted it, in the deep, dark, dirty depths of my Google Drive. However, in 2017, I was working a job that I thought I would love, but actually circumstantially, in the day-to-day workings of things, seemed to not really be suiting me, and I started to think about other things that might feel better, like a little valve on my life, a little release. And I had this, what I still sometimes to this day believe to be a genuinely really good idea, a really good concept for a book that I thought, if I can bottle this, if I can chase this and get it on paper and convince other people that it's a cool idea, I think that I'd like to commit my life to this for a little bit, at least. So I started getting up really early in the morning. I used to start getting up at like 5:30, 6 o'clock, going into work early before I needed to, going into the Pret next door and writing. I started doing loads of writing meetups with people that I knew. I'd try and write into the night, or at least be near my computer trying to write. I even took myself away to a YHA in the middle of nowhere in a dormitory where it was like £13 a night for like 7 nights to try and write. I did that several times. When I was on the way to work, I was making notes about it. When I was in meetings, I was instead secretly drawing room plans of the rooms the characters inhabited. And honestly, I'm not that secretive about my creative process. When people ask me what I'm working on, I've often told them I'm writing a novel. I'm trying to write a novel. It's happening. But here's the fact. Here's the true, cruel, cut glass clear, plain facts. It's 2023. That was 6 years ago. And what do I have? I don't have a novel. I've got 100,000 words of something. I've got a 20,000 word version of that something that's a YA novel. I've got a 10,000 version of that bit of rambling that's written in verse. But do I have a novel? No, I don't. I've listened to, in their entirety, at least 3 whole years-long expansive writing advice podcasts. I've taken masterclasses on masterclass.com about narrative structure and how to create intrigue and pace. I've done it all, apart from actually write the book. Now I'm under no illusion that you might not want to write a book. That's fine. In fact, it's kind of a weird thing to want to do. And to be honest, maybe I'm just a consumer of books, and like one of the like natural instincts of a human is that when they see something they like, they want to try and emulate emulate it or take it apart and work out how it's made and make your own. I think that's like a very human instinct, so maybe it's just that. But even if you don't want to write a book, that's not a thing you want to do, I bet there's something that you want to do, some dream that you're always like, when I X, I will Y. I want to Z, but I can't until A. And I don't think that you should apply all relationship advice to the creative process, but the phrase that I always see on Instagram that keeps batting around in my head is, if he wanted to, he would. And while, yeah, sometimes I struggle with focus, sometimes I struggle with prioritizing my time, sometimes I'm a little bit scatty, to be honest, I want to big myself up a bit and be like, there are lots of things that I've wanted to do and then I've fricking done them. I wanted to write a poetry collection and get it published and even illustrate it myself. I did that. I wanted to learn to make my own clothes. I'm actually doing that. I wanted to create a Patreon community that felt like walking into a warm living room where there were always steaming cookies. I think that's a thing. That is what the Gumption Club is. I know that other people helped me create those. By no means have I done any of those things really on my own. And I've also been incredibly lucky. Like, when we say privilege, I think we just also mean luck, systemically lucky to have had those things. But I did put my own momentum behind them. They were things that I wanted to happen, and I kept nudging the ball. I kept being like, I would like this to be a thing. I will keep putting my energy into making that a thing. I feel like I keep pouring energy into trying to write this book and it's not happening. So if you struggle to work out why, not that you're not achieving your dreams, but you seem to only be intermittently pursuing them, I would like to go through some creative self-sabotage reasons why I think that I'm not doing my book, and a pros cons list of whether I still should, or it is a dream that I should just let go. Like Marianne let Connell go off to America to study English, even though they had such a good time mashing parts. Maybe I should just let it fly. I'm going to go through this list and I'm not going to say, per se, that I mean any of it, but they're all possible feelings I think I might have, and writing them down is helping me work out whether they're things I actually believe are true about me. You might find them useful. You might hear one and be like, that might not be true for Lena, but that sure is true for me. And together we're going to work out why the hell we are not pursuing our dreams. Reasons for my behaviour that mean that I should let go of this project. Number one, if I wanted to, I would. Maybe it's not that deep. Maybe my actions speak louder than my words, and maybe your relationship with your creative work is kind of like a partnership, in that sometimes you just don't want to see someone. It's just, on paper, they're perfect for you. You love the idea of them. You've actually sunk a lot of time into getting to know them and date them. But for whatever unreachable existential issue that there is no point pouring any more time into working out, some things just don't work, it's just not right. To the left, everything you own in the box to the left. In the closet, that's my stuff. Number two is that I became attached to the idea of being a novelist or writing a novel when I worked in publishing. And another thing that correlated during that time was that I was really desperate to stop working for a big company and doing a 9-to-5 job with a huge internal structure. It was something that was like spiritually exhausting me. It's not really something that I think is good for me, or I have a theory that maybe not good for anyone. And I really did want to get out of it. And maybe whatever job you're in, the narrative examples of people escaping that pass across your desk every day are naturally going to be the things that you think of first. And what I saw all the time in publishing, even though it is quite rare, but when you work in a really big book company, you see all the exceptions to the rule, all the examples of the extraordinary people. And there were people every single day in my industry who are getting £100,000 publishing deals to write their book. Sometimes not even finished. Sometimes not even started. But while I don't consciously remember thinking this, I probably did at some point cross my mind that if I could write a book and people liked it and it was good, I could get this advance, this lump sum of money that would mean that I would be able to bow out of the rat race. And so subconsciously, the book came to symbolise to me escape. Now, weirdly, emphasis on weirdly, you all kept watching my channel and it meant that I could leave that job anyway. I got the outcome that I so craved without pursuing the route my brain had attached to that outcome. So I have kept pursuing this route when I already have the outcome. And yet the adventure map, the cycle route, the little road trip plan of how I was going to get there is still beautiful to me, still romanticized, still something I gravitate towards, because it's something I've dwelt on so much that I'm forgetting why I started dwelling on it in the first place. The next reason could be that I've scratched the itch with poetry and now I don't really creatively need it. Like, I really enjoy writing poetry. It's something that, while writing a good poem is really freaking hard and takes a lot of work, writing a rough poem that I feel confident enough to keep polishing until maybe it becomes good is something I feel really comfortable in doing. Something that comes, I don't want to say easily, but I just feel like it's a comfortable creative space for me. Craig thinks it's kind of ridiculous that I'm trying to write in this specific way when obviously I enjoy writing poetry. It's something that comes easily, so why would I try and write a different medium? And maybe he's right. Maybe there is also this kind of industry consumer led thing, and maybe this happens for you creatively as well, where there's a certain version of your skill, a certain way you can express it that would sell more or bring you greater intellectual weight or merit. Just like if I was a short film director rather than the producer of a YouTube channel, I would probably have a lot more social clout, even though the origin of those skill sets and the level of them are probably kind of similar. For me, if you're a novelist, you tend to get paid a lot more. I don't even think that some of the biggest poets in the country are full-time poets. From my knowledge, they've all got other jobs. You don't really get advances in poetry at all. You have to write for free, and then you get like a cut of the royalties. There's a video about all of that up here. It's not really something that people consume in large amounts unless you're Ruby Core. Whereas novels, there's lots of people who are full-time novelists that aren't selling amazingly. And also people buy the option rights to turn your writing into TV, and you get all the money even if they actually never make it into a TV show or a film. You can enter your writing for awards that people have actually heard of in your real life. There are poetry awards, but I would argue that they're all freaking niche. So maybe it's the ego that I have that's like, oh, I have to write a novel because then I'll be a real writer and people will see me as very deep and very intelligent. The next point, let's not dwell on that too long because it's dark. It's dark, but it's possible. The next one is I like the idea of myself as a novelist, but I don't actually enjoy it. I definitely loved planning the novel. I loved inventing the characters. I loved inventing the settings. I loved inventing the magical elements, the rules of the world that I was creating. The writing, sometimes it would flow, but potentially still be a bit shit. Hello. Oh my god, that's the biggest bee I've ever seen. Hello, sir. Would you like to write a novel? I feel like this is your shed. I just live in it. Oh, but when it comes to the writing, I do feel like I have really struggled. I've really struggled to sit still. I've really struggled to stay in the zone. I've really struggled to find like a prose voice that feels like me, and I don't know if that just comes with lots and lots more time and lots more practice, even though I feel like I've been practicing a lot. I've wrote 100,000 words. It might just take more practice than I've given it to find my voice in that medium, but I do think that there were lots of times when I kind of tortured myself to just sit there and keep writing, because that's what hardcore writers do. They just sit at their desk and they stare until they write something. And I am more of the opinion that while blood, sweat and tears is necessary to do hard things, I do think you should be enjoying it at least some of the time. And I felt like I have, from my own mindset, made it very unenjoyable for me, which is why in recent months I have been really hardcore avoiding it. But isn't that the thing, that sometimes the things that you think that you'll enjoy, or perhaps you used to enjoy, you just stop enjoying? And maybe that's what happened to me. Or maybe I had this idea of what I'd enjoy, and actually I'm just not that person. Those aren't my character traits. I don't want to sit alone silently for hours in my own little world. I want to be jumping from project to project, or doing more tactile things with my hands, like sewing. Maybe it's just actually not who I am, and maybe I just need to reconcile myself with that. The next point is, I think that I should, because I think that the book that I'm writing is good. I feel like on some narcissistic level, I feel like the world needs it. And the world doesn't need it. The world doesn't need that from me. It already has loads of amazing novels, and as it is, people don't have time to read them and review them. There's more. The sad thing that you realise when you work in books is that there are way more writers and way more books in existence than there are readers, like proportionally. That it's really out of whack. So maybe I've been putting this pressure on myself where I think I've got this really unique message and this really unique story that everybody needs to hear. And while I think that is a mantra that you're taught when you're nervous about writing is like, the world needs to hear your story. I don't know how much it applies to me. And I think I get to choose whether it applies to me. But I think that people have probably heard from me quite a lot. I already have like an amazing platform. Do they need a novel from me? Probably not. If I really enjoyed making one, would I give it to them anyway? Yes. If there was one, you can have it. But there isn't one. So why am I stressing about making one? The next point is maybe the pandemic has made me crave self-sufficiency over accolades. This one hits home a little bit. I feel like this one could be kind of true. I don't know whether I've become more healthy or less healthy in that, but I do think that having a lot of possibilities floated in front of my face where I was like, wow, the renting market isn't going to be here for me. The supermarkets potentially aren't going to be here for me. Sometimes they just don't have food in them. Sometimes you're not allowed to go to the doctor. And I do think that changed my psyche a little bit, even though I believe that, and I've lived a very lucky, safe life where I haven't had to think about that a lot. And the pandemic made me think about how much I want to prioritize very immediate skill sets that I want, especially when I'm thinking more about the climate crisis and stuff. I really think that it's shifted never in a million years would I have thought, I'm going to make my own clothes, or I'm going to actually learn to cook, or I want to learn more about how to grow my own food. Until the pandemic, until I started thinking, why do a lot of the pep talks that I heard growing up and a lot of the schooling taught me to try and be extraordinary in a very specific field and actively discouraged me, or at least negated to teach me how to feed myself, how to clothe myself, how to do my own taxes, how to collect water, how to fix a bit of furniture. And I felt so skills poor in that moment. I felt so embarrassingly impotent. I felt like I'd become good at these niches that aren't necessarily always going to be things that people want or will pay me for. And I don't know if that is a scarcity mindset that I should try and rebalance in my brain and say, hey, you're also allowed to make art. You're also allowed to make things that are long and arduous and silly, and maybe nobody will ever read them even though you spend more than 300 hours on them. You're allowed that kind of creative depth or creative frivolity. Not everything needs to be a meal or a plant or something you can hold. But then on the other side, I think I was too much the other way, and I think this is about to lead into one of my other points. But I do feel, because of what I've learned about the climate crisis and all of the different ways I tiptoe around eco-anxiety, that there's this real need when you feel like you are day to day surrounded by people who don't really want to engage with the science or look up, to coin a phrase from a very famous film. I feel like maybe there is a bit of pressure internally in my own head to only do the useful things, only do the most urgent, useful, effective things. And we can do creative pursuits later. Once we've stopped all the oil fields from being opened or whatever, then I'm allowed to write my book. And I'm not exactly on the front lines of campaigning for that. Obviously, I've directed my full-time job kind of around trying to get people to talk about the climate crisis more and learn a little bit more, or even be open to learning about it. But I'm not on the front lines of stopping Rosebank. I'm not out here asking for meetings with politicians to try and stop them from what they're doing. Like, I'm not doing that. So maybe I should just write my novel. And I guess it also comes back to the vocation and what do you pursue? Do you pursue something that interests you, or do you search for something that nobody is doing and try to fill that and do it more? Do you spend your life competing with lots of other people who are also trying to do almost the exact same thing as you? Or do you find something that not enough people are doing and doing that, however badly? And perhaps maybe that's also a little bit of a coping mechanism, because if nobody's doing it that much, then the bar is quite low, and even if you do it badly, at least you're still doing it, and it's easier to ace that field when there's not that many people doing it. And the last one in this list, and my biggest fear, is that I've missed it. That I had this cool idea that really captured me and that wanted me to write it, and I missed it. I wasn't free. I didn't have enough hours. I wasn't the right person. I didn't have the right skill set, and I missed the idea. It has gone, and I'm here writing it love letters, strumming my guitar, singing its songs, trying to tempt it back, and it's moved on. Right person, wrong time. There's this story that Elizabeth Gilbert tells in her TED Talk that absolutely haunts me, and I'd like to read it out for you. right now because I think she meant it to be inspiring. But honestly, it's something that I think about most days. And I don't know if it brings me more doom or hope. She talks about knowing this American poet, Ruth Stone, who is in her 90s. She has been a poet her entire life. She told me that when she was growing up in rural Virginia, she would be working in the fields and she would feel and hear a poem coming at her from over the landscape. She said it was like a thunderous train of air coming barreling down at her over the landscape, and she'd feel it coming because it would shake the earth under her feet. She knew that she had only one thing to do at that point, and that was to, in her words, run like hell. And then she would run like hell to the house, chased by this poem. She had to get to a piece of paper and a pencil fast enough so that when it thundered through her, she could collect it and grab it on the page. Other times she wouldn't be fast enough, so she'd be running and running, but she wouldn't get to the house and the poem would barrel through her and she would miss it. It would continue across the landscape looking, as she put it, for another poet. And then there were times, and this is the piece I will never forget, where she would almost miss it. So she's running to the house and she's looking for the paper and the poem passes through her and she grabs a pencil just as it's going through her. And then she said she would reach out with her other hand and she would catch it. She would catch the poem by its tail and she would pull it backwards into her body as she was transcribing on the page. And in those instances, the poems would come up on the page perfect and intact, but backwards from the last word to the first.
Oh, why did they make me feel everything? I want to feel nothing, but why am I feeling everything?
Okay, so here's the thing. I think the idea that I have is cool. I often tell people about it in the pub, partly because it's a fun thing to talk about. I think the idea asks a lot more questions about society and life. And I want to have those conversations with people, and I haven't written the book, so I just want to shortcut that so I get to have the conversations without having to write the book. And also because I kind of, like, I think there's like a really sick part of me that is like, I want to read this book. I wonder if I tell enough people about it, somebody else will write it for me, and I'll just get to read it. But when I think about somebody having heard exactly what my idea is and then taking it from me and writing it as their own, it makes my blood boil. So what's up with that? Why am I doing? It's like a self-harm thing. It's like, oh, well, you're not going to write it. Well, let me put it over here. What if I missed the idea? And what if I can't get it back? What if that's an idea that suited me in that time frame, in that mind frame, and it's not the right idea for me to write at 33. It was the right idea for me to write at 27. It's not right anymore. I need to find a new idea. I can't bring myself to write another book until I've like really made peace with this one, in the same way that you might meet somebody who's perfect for you, but until you've reconciled your feelings by your ex, you can't move on. But maybe it's not too late. Maybe it's still going through me, and that's why I'm making this video, and maybe I need to drag it backwards. Maybe it will come out backwards on the page if I just get its tail right now. Oh, I don't know where I fall on the spectrum of like creative life is just science, brain cells moving around and making new ideas, or creativity is also kind of a little bit spiritual and something that is a little bit ethereal and you can't really get hold of, and it has all this, you know what I mean? Like, I'm kind of in between those two camps, and that question of like, did I miss the story, did I miss the book, is what's like torturing me a little bit, I think. And it really is a question of whether I sit in the linear, like you write it or you don't write it, write something else, it's not that deep camp, or you're in the there is a story that is trying to find you. What you seek seeks you. And maybe I need to reconcile myself with that. Like, what do I really believe about maybe this book problem is challenging me to think, like, what are my beliefs about creativity? What is worthwhile doing? What do you genuinely believe about that? So to round off this video with a few hopeful things, here's my shorter and less messy list of reasons that I should still try to write my book, even though it's been 6 years. Number 1, I've been putting too much pressure on myself to be really good at it. There are lots of things I do now that I'm in my 30s that I've been doing for a really long time, so I'm okay at them. Public speaking, not live tweeting all of my feelings on social media, organising my time, doing my tax return, things that were all very hard to me at one point, but now feel natural. I'm still a beginner at writing a book, and it seems like it's not a really straightforward kind of discipline. It's not like sewing. You can't just like incrementally get better at it and suddenly you can make a doublet and cuffs. Lots of authors do interviews where they're like, I feel like I'm a beginner every time I write my new book. I was only an expert in writing my old book, and then I had to write this new book, and I felt like I was genuinely just starting from the beginning. So maybe it's that I am afraid of myself as an adult beginner and I'm way too late to be a young prodigy. And maybe it's just accepting that and being positive about that. The second one is I have focus issues that I need to address. I think that's true. I do struggle to just sit still physically for long amounts of time unless I am knitting. I'd love to be able to knit and write at the same time. I'm going to petition the Lord Jesus above, who has been ghosting me for the past 33 years, but now would be a good time to speak. Hello. I'd like to petition whoever's in charge of human bodies to have an extra hand. Stop it. Not like that. Stop. No, this is a writing shed, not a toilet. Because it would be really helpful to be able to knit and write at the same time, because I feel like that's one of the only times I can stay still. So when I'm doing something with my hands, and unfortunately you need your hands to write, unless I write the whole novel with my microphone. No, you can't. Don't do that. I know that people do that because it's an accessibility tool. Maybe I'm better at speak. Maybe I should just speak my novel. I'm going to put a pin in that for a second. I do have focus issues, and maybe that's something I just need to address, that I need to maybe go and do some meditation and be able to sit with myself. Maybe writing a novel takes the kind of mind that is okay sitting with themselves for a long time without going into some kind of existential jittery meltdown, and maybe that's the problem. And like, if I solve that, I can write the book. Maybe I'm writing the wrong book and I need to start a new one. Also a possibility. Maybe this idea isn't even that good, and even if it is good, maybe I'm not a good enough writer to write it yet, and I need to put it in a box for 10 years, become a better writer by writing a simpler book with a simpler concept. Maybe I'm addicted to the dopamine which writing poetry gives me. That's also genuinely a possibility. Writing poetry is objectively faster. The revision process, very long and slow, but you can do it in very, very short bursts. I'm not saying that poetry isn't hard to write, but I am saying that the editorial process and the writing process can be done easily in chunks, whereas with like flowing novels with lots of different threads and narratives, it is objectively going to take more big blocks of time. Unless you have like the mind of a Bletchley Park coder, which spoiler alert, I do not. And maybe simply I lack the discipline to do the hard thing, and this is a great opportunity for me to make a rigorous schedule, routine like I've never routined before, because we all know Lena hates a routine, and just turn up, read and listen to the writing pep talks and the writing journals that are like, you have to write every day. Look, I have no idea whether this has been in any way helpful, but it has been incredibly cathartic for me. So thank you for listening. I would love to hear in the comments whether you have any dreams or ambitions or things on your to-do list, your bucket list, that you just can't bring yourself to get around to. And it's not, I used to tell myself it was time constraints. I used to tell myself it was space constraints. But now I have this shed that I keep patio cleaner in, and knee pads instead of inspiring quills and amazing books. But I do have this is a space this is a room of one's own. I've got it. Your excuses might be valid, but mine certainly, for the first time in my life, aren't. I am very mentally well right now. I have enough space. I probably do have enough time if I carved it out. I have a job that makes me feel creatively fulfilled. Maybe that's the problem. Maybe this channel creatively fulfills me too hard and now I don't need another creative outlet. Maybe I should quit YouTube. Not doing it. Don't. Stop it. I already have the best job ever, and this job didn't exist when I was a teenager or a young adult, to be honest. So maybe I just need to reconcile myself with the fact that I found the creative medium I'm most happy in, and it's not one that has an amazing historical lineage or lots of people that have done it before. Also a possibility. Why aren't you doing the thing that you want to do? That's what I want to hear in the comments below. Have any of these rung true for you? I honestly don't even know if any of these are actually true for me, but they're definitely possibilities, and I think it's always useful to write them down. If you are new to this channel, this isn't really what I usually do, but if you would like some more rambles, I'll leave some suggestions for rambly videos in the description. Failing that, I reckon you might like one of these videos. This video doesn't have a sponsor and was made completely possible by the Gumption Club, who tip me per video to make sure these videos keep happening. Let's make art, because if anything else, it's the only thing that separates us from dogs. And I like dogs, but I don't want to be a dog, so maybe I'll write that novel. Frog's not out.